calf stretch, hopefully you watched that one first, second. You watched your basic one first, and then you watched the calf stretch. This is the double calf stretch. We call it the double calf stretch, but it's so much more because it gets everything down the backs of the legs. And from our habits of positive heels shoe wearing, our habit of sitting, and if you don't think you're a sitter, I challenge you to actually calculate how much time you spend sitting throughout a day, and you will probably be shocked and maybe horrified to figure out just how many hours you spend sitting, because you sit in the car, you sit to eat likely, and if you're a gym exerciser, just walk into any gym and you'll see that many of the pieces of equipment you're using, you sit down to use. And the problem is not sitting in and of itself, but it's the amount of time we spend in that single position. So the problem would be the same if it were standing. If you stand in one single position for many hours throughout a day, so people who stand, bank tellers, nurses, people who stand in one position for a long period of time, that has its own set of problems with it. So this particular exercise, the double calf stretch, is really great for, like I said, lengthening the muscles down the backs of the legs. So it works on the calves, but also up through the hamstrings as well. And when the hamstrings are short, they tend to pull the pelvis into a tucked or post-tilted position, which isn't a great place for your hip joints, for your pelvic floor, for a number of things. And I'll talk about that a little bit in one of the other videos. So to do your double calf stretch, you're going to put the balls of both of your feet up on your half dome, or whatever it is you're using to stretch with. If you're using a rolled up towel, you'll probably get tired of that or progress through that pretty quickly because it compresses too much. So if your calves are really super tight in the beginning, that might be sufficient, but probably only for a week or two. As I look down at my feet, I want to make sure that the outside edges of the feet are straight. And then as I hinge forward, I want to make sure that I'm pivoting about the hip joint, that I'm not just flexing at the spine. So you can see the curve of my spine here. So as I hinge forward, I'm going to maintain that curve because the motion is happening at the hip joint. So you can see that my tailbone or my sacrum moved up towards the ceiling, my ASIS moved down towards my thighs. So we're kind of closing up that crease at the hip joint. And then I have this here just really as a place to rest my hands, not a place to rest my body weight. Okay, so you want to make sure that you can hold yourself in this position without having to use your hands, because your hamstrings will help hold you up and your abdominal muscles will help hold you up. So if I'm able to tip forward far enough, you notice that I still have my knees straight. I didn't add a bend to the knee. So if you get down so far that the knee is bent, you need to come back up so you can keep your knees straight. But if you're able to go a little bit further, you may not need something quite so high to place the hands on. So you may be able to come down to a chair seat or something like that. But if there's not a lot of length in your hamstrings, this might even be too far. You might actually be up here where you could put your hands or your forearms on like the edge of a counter or the back of a chair or the back of the couch, something like that. So you want to make sure, here's your points to remember, you want to make sure that as you hinge forward, your rear goes back. So I no longer have a vertical leg. If I drop that plumb line down from the hip joint, it's going to hit the ground behind my heels. Okay, see that? You want to make sure that you've maintained the lumbar curve here, that you didn't come forward like this. So you're going to need to do this in front of a mirror because you're going to need to check it. Most of us have no idea where our bodies are in space, so we use the mirror as feedback a lot. We've got a whole wall of mirrors in here that we use when we're doing class. So you want to make sure that you don't lose the lumbar curve. If it looks like this, you flexed your spine forward and you didn't actually change the length of the muscles down the backs of the legs. You want to make sure that the motion happens from here, and you want to make sure that you're not leaning on your hands. Okay? Those are the most important pieces to your double calf stretch.